Good afternoon. My name is Jenna Eggert, CEO and founder of RCRHUB. I'm so very excited to present our July series about our entrepreneurs. And so I am going to introduce Scott Friesen and Paulina Molina. So Scott, give us your official title.
I am the CEO and founder of ABAX Health.
Fantastic. And Paulina.
And I'm Paulina, the marketing manager for RCRHUB, and I'm very excited to be here with you guys today.
100%.
100%. Absolutely. Took my line, Scott. Took my line. So really quick, Scott, we're talking about the similarities that we're going to see in July and August that our RCM entrepreneurs have to our Olympians. And there's so many qualities that you all have. And so I thought, what a better way to meet our community, to tie our community and talk to our founders. So why ABAX?
Well, I'll tell you what. I started ABAX. It's kind of a long, convoluted story. So I'll kind of start at the beginning. So I've been in healthcare for the last 20 years, mostly on the revenue cycle side, mostly on the vendor side. In 2009, I started a company called Newport Credentialing Solutions, which, unrelated to ABAX Health, was a provider data management company. And effectively what we did was we helped doctors get paid by managing their provider enrollment and provider data management challenges. I was blessed enough to have a really good team. And in 2018, we were acquired by a company called Track Manager, with the ultimate vision of taking a number of products and technology solutions and services solutions, rolling them up together and going back out to the market. And ultimately, they built that company up to where I believe it was in 2020, they sold it to Simpler. So as a result of selling my company back in 2018, I stuck around for a year or so, watched all the great work that the folks at Track Manager did, and then found myself saying, listen, guys, we did everything that we wanted to do. It's time for me to take some time off and figure out what I wanted to do next. And so that's what I did. And wouldn't you know it, COVID hit. And everybody is, the world is upside down. And here I am, who've been grinding as an entrepreneur from 2009 to 2018, sitting on the sidelines, sitting on my hands, not being able to do anything. And frankly, it was killing me. Everybody was going through everything that they were going through, but at the same time, I wanted to be a part of something, and I just couldn't be a part of it. So fast forward a little bit, COVID is kind of on the tail end, and I basically went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Hey, Scott, you're older than 45 now. You need to get a colonoscopy." And I said, "Great, I'll get right on that." And so I walked out the door, and I conveniently forgot, basically on purpose, because who wants to run out and get a colonoscopy, to go out and get that colonoscopy. Well, fast forward a year later, and I get a letter in the mail. And the letter basically says, "Hey, by the way, did you ever get that colonoscopy?" And this is from a large health system. I'll just say on the Northeast, right? And so they said, "Did you ever get that colonoscopy? And if you didn't, would you go ahead and get the referral? And would you go ahead and schedule that visit? And would you go ahead and get your colonoscopy? And would you go ahead and get the results? And would you go ahead and then give the results back to us so we can check the box in Epic that you got your colonoscopy?" And I've been in healthcare for 20 plus years. And I thought, I'm a pretty savvy healthcare user. And I thought to myself, that was the most ludicrous thing that I had ever heard of in my life. I mean, think about it for a second. God forbid I actually had colon cancer. A letter a year after the fact is not the way that we want to be taking care of our patients. And so it got me thinking for a second, well, there are really two people that lost in that example, right? I lost because I didn't get the care that I needed when my doctor said I needed to get that care. And the health system lost because they didn't get the revenue for that procedure in and of itself. And so it got me thinking, if it's happening to me, how many tens of other millions of people is this happening to, number one? But more importantly, being a revenue cycle guy, how many billions of dollars of unscheduled referrals are out there that health systems and medical groups are just leaving on the table? And so it got me thinking, man, wouldn't it be cool if, right? We can talk about this a little bit later, but I love to build things. I love the big questions, the whys, that sort of thing. And I kind of thought to myself, what if we could actually build an AI tool that would go into the electronic health record and data mine and identify all of those unscheduled referrals? And what would happen, or wouldn't it be cool if we could then quantify the financial value of all of those unscheduled referrals? And then, wow, wouldn't it be cool if we could actually go ahead and act on those unscheduled referrals through a combination of automated outreach, but most importantly, with a human on the other side of the phone or the text or the email that would then go ahead and financially clear the patient and then would go ahead and schedule that patient. The outcome would be monumental in the industry, in the fact that all of that unscheduled care that all these patients should have been getting, weren't getting during COVID, would be taken care of. They would be scheduled. But also knowing that COVID blew up the finances for the healthcare industry on the provider side during COVID, and for the last couple of years coming out of COVID, it would provide a very, very needed new revenue stream into the organizations. And it's a win-win across the board. And so the why really is twofold, right? Number one, our vision at ABAX is pretty simple. Like, we want to ensure that every patient receives the care they need when they need it. Pretty lofty, pretty, big, hairy, audacious goal. But our mission, how do we accomplish our vision? Our mission is to identify, quantify, and act on the untapped revenue. And so that's really the problem we're trying to solve. That's the why we did this. It all came from a personal experience. And I got to tell you, the response that we're getting from the industry, the response, more importantly, that we're getting from the patients, kind of brings a tear to your eye, because there have been many instances where we've talked to patients where they should have gotten care, they didn't get the care. We got them the scheduled visits, they got the care, and they call back and thank us for actually following up with them in a way that they weren't getting the follow-up with their regular organization.
So Scott, were you shocked when you didn't receive the call, number one? And I think we talked about that. But most importantly, were you shocked that nobody in our community in RCM was doing what you launched?
So, yeah, that's a great question. So when I had this crazy idea, I spent 6 months talking to everybody in the industry that I knew,
right.
friends of the hub, friends that, potential buyers. I talked to attorneys, I talked to revenue cycle consultants, I talked to people across the board. And ultimately the response was, nobody's working on this. And this is a problem that's hidden in plain sight. Right. So I was shocked, frankly. I wanted to get to a no, right? Like, building a company, and starting a company, scaling a company, and then, being lucky enough to be able to exit a company is really, really hard, right? And so yes. I wanted to get to a quick no. I wanted people to tell me, yeah, there are 3 other companies that are doing it today. One of them is a $500 million a year company, in terms of ARR, and you have no chance whatsoever. I wanted to get to a no, but when I spoke to people in the industry, in the community that I respected, that ran multi-billion-dollar medical groups or health systems, and the answer came back no, it dawned on me, all right, this is an opportunity too big to go after. And so, to not go after, I should say. And so that's why we decided to go after it.
Okay. So when we talk about those folks you reached out to, and they're probably going to be mentors. So let's talk a little bit about your path and your mentors.
So, yeah, from an education standpoint, my path is really unorthodox, right? I think you and I have joked before, like I except for one person that we both love dearly, yes. I don't know anybody that went to school for revenue cycle, right? No. I mean, I find most people kind of fall into it. And I'm one of those people that kind of fell into it, right? So in college, my history was, my major, I double majored in history and philosophy. I did my master's degree in early American religious history. I'm a pure liberal arts guy through and through. But I really believe that a liberal arts education is perfectly primed for healthcare for a number of reasons. Number one, in liberal arts, right, before, I mean, I'm dating myself now, but, before you could just go online and chat GPT and answer for a paper, you actually had to go and read books. You had to go into the stacks. You had to go into the library. You had to pull, millions of different disparate data points together and put it together and try to solve a problem. And that's what we're doing in healthcare. That's what we're doing in revenue cycle, right? I mean, you're constantly being bombarded by the patient experience. Are we improving the patient experience? Technology, it's constantly changing. Operations, how are we operationalizing this? HR obviously is a big issue. And of course, the clinical outcomes piece as well. And so I feel like liberal arts kind of, gave me the right foundation in order to do what we're doing now, which is effectively building companies. But on the mentorship side, it's interesting because I've definitely had a couple of mentors. oddly enough, on the provider side, not necessarily on the vendor side, because I feel like everybody on the vendor side is super competitive. We're all type A personalities. We all want to go and conquer the world, right? And so they don't want to give up their secret sauce. But what I found is that on the mentorship side, and particularly on the vendor side, what has helped me develop, over time, is that I see a business coach. And I see a business coach every 2 weeks. And so I feel like there's a huge part of the vendor community that doesn't talk about the emotional toll of building a company. They don't talk about the emotional quotient that you need to deal with, you're building something that's never been built before. You're trying to convince people to come on this crazy ride with you to help you build it. You're trying to build a world-class team. You're trying to sell an industry, revenue cycle, and healthcare in general that is really not loving the greatest, the stuff that comes out first. They don't want it. Nobody ever wants to be first in healthcare, right? At least on the operation side, and definitely on the revenue cycle side. And so I feel like, a business coach has been extremely helpful to me to, number one, give me a third-party objective view on how to deal with issues, give me the ability to bounce ideas off of this person, and he can tell me, I'm crazy, or, that makes a lot of sense. Right. But then what I do is I take what I learned from the business coach, and then I go back to my mentors and I say, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? There aren't many that are out there. I find it's kind of hard to find a mentor. And when you do, you want to grab onto them and you don't want to let them go without being kind of a pain in the neck. But I really kind of balance a combination of the business coach with kind of industry mentors to help me learn. But I guess the other piece, from a mentorship standpoint is I'm very, very excited about learning from the people that are working with me on this project as well, right, at ABAX. I mean, there's so many things that you can learn from these people. I, by far, am the dumbest person on the team. The team that we pulled together at ABAX has been doing this collectively for over 150 years. They have the experience. They've been there and done that before. I like to say they've seen the movie. And so I'm learning from my team members as much as they're probably learning from me. So I think you kind of throw those three parts together, and hopefully you get an outcome that you're looking for, and do some good in the world.
And I think too, in regards to the team you built, you have good listeners and you have good communicators, and you surrounded yourself with kind of that in-house bandwidth and mentorship as well.
Yeah, I feel like this go around. So in my first team, company, I had a partner, and he worked in the business so that I could work on the business. And we didn't really he had his lane and I had my lane, so to speak, and that was it. In this instance, I said to myself, well, you don't have a partner, but you can't go this alone, right? I mean, I'm not that bright. Like, you've got to find people that kind of understand the vision, what we're trying to accomplish in healthcare, and bring them in and let them really kind of lead, right? Like I rip off Steve Jobs all the time, right? Like one of the times he said, it's, we don't hire smart people to tell them what to do. We hire smart people so that they tell us what to do. Hire them, give them the rope, give them the support to be successful, and then get out of their way, but hold them accountable. And I feel like with our team at ABAX, we've done a really good job finding the right people for the right roles, but then also know that they work collaboratively together, because we all have the same mission in mind, is to grow and build a company that will provide meaningful impact, not only on the revenue cycle side of the business, but also on the clinical and outcome side of the kind of equation.
That is so interesting. Every entrepreneurial interview I've done so far has referred to that in Steve Jobs. And get the right people, let them go.
Oh, it's funny.
Really, really interesting. And we have 3 more of these interviews, so I'll be really anxious to see if every one of my interviews says that. So
it's funny. My team makes fun of me all the time, and there's another Steve analogy that I could tell you if you want, but it's the perfect definition of what a startup environment is like. And everybody wants to be a startup for the shortest period of time, right? Scale, across the board. So at some point down the road, I could tell you the other analogy, but Steve Jobs had so many great analogies that were underutilized. It makes sense to pay attention to them.
It's interesting. Okay. Last question from my end in regards to healthcare revenue cycle. Scott, you and I have been doing this probably far too long, and It's good. 5 to 10 years. I see things changing every 6 weeks, every 6 months. The way we're doing things at the hub have changed dramatically. I mean, we have bots doing things that I always thought we'd have research teams doing. So we
Yep.
too are handing that over. In a year or two, what do you see? How do you see healthcare revenue cycle changing in regards to what you do, or just our community on a whole?
Well, I would be crazy to say that, I don't want everybody in the community to not buy from ABAX, right? We can solve a lot of revenue problems for them. So in the first couple of years, yeah, I'd love the community we'd like to become ubiquitous within the RCRHUB community. That's number one on the provider side. But I kind of look at it two ways. There's the 5 to 10 year question, which, everything is about AI right now. Everybody else is talking about how it's going to improve revenue cycle and operations and clinical outcomes. And it's, on the drug discovery piece. And it is true, right? But I also think that, we're in the first inning of what will be a very long game when it comes to artificial intelligence and what's going to happen next, right? And so no one can figure out what's going to happen 6 months from now, and so let alone 5 to 10 years from now. So at least from my perspective, what we're really keen on focusing on is the next 12 to 24 months, right? Mm-hmm. And as I kind of look at it this way, AI is going to allow a lot of organizations, particularly on the revenue cycle side, to do more with less. But I also feel like what we're trying to do at ABAX is to solve, a problem, which is how do you maximize all of those unscheduled referrals and bring those patients back into the organization, right? How do we improve both from a revenue perspective and from a margin perspective? And how do we use our artificial intelligence, as we said, because we identify, quantify, and then act on all of those unscheduled referrals. And so as I kind of look at what we're focused on in the next, 1 to 2 years, it's using technology, again, artificial intelligence to do more with less, using our technology. I mean, imagine this for a second. Imagine if, one of the part of the roadmap where we want to be able to do is we want to be able to do proactive identification of procedures that need to occur. So imagine for a second on the value-based care side, not on the fee-for-service side, on the VBC side, you've got patients that are diabetics, and they have to, because of their VBC contracts with the payers, have to have their annual glaucoma exam. Who's identifying those patients today? How are those patients being identified? And what happens, God forbid, that person who has glaucoma gets into some worse situation, right? We want to be able to use our technology to be able to proactively identify those patients, not only because it's the right thing to do from a care continuity standpoint, but also for the fact that, that's going to cause, the patient, the health system to blow through their VBC cap rate and actually then lose money on that patient. Think about it for a second. Healthcare, at least in the revenue cycle community, yes, our margins are getting better incrementally over time, but we're still working on a 1 to 3% net margin. And in an organization that wants to thrive and grow, you can't do that. That's not good enough anymore. What we're trying to do in the next 1 to 2 years is again, I'm going to rip off Steve Jobs for a second here, is to have healthcare think differently about revenue generation. You don't have to meet budget by cutting services or by cutting, staff. Imagine if you could actually make budget by increasing your top line and improving your margin. So as I kind of look at the next 12 to 24 months, leave it to me to try to create something that people aren't thinking about before, but the team is up for the challenge. Right. How do we get people to think differently about healthcare? Yes, we can use artificial intelligence, but ultimately, and this is where I think people lose it in what we see in LinkedIn and other places, healthcare is still human. It is still emotional. And so when you have 10,000 baby boomers that are, turning 65 every day for the next 10 years, for example, my parents, they're still typing and texting in all caps. Like, somebody who is sick, somebody who is going through that emotional toll needs to have the human element to reach out, touch their hand, hold them, and say, listen, you're going to be okay. We're going to help you through this. We're going to do the financial clearance for you. We're going to schedule you with the right doctor for the right procedure, and we're going to make sure you get the care you need. And so in that instance, and then I promise I'll stop, I kind of feel like at ABAX we're blessed, because in my last business, we did great work. We helped doctors make, hundreds of millions of dollars, and that was awesome as an organization. But here, we actually have the opportunity to do well while doing good. We can do good for our patients, and we can do well for our clients, and hopefully for our employees from a career development standpoint. And I don't think there are a lot of opportunities out there in healthcare to be able to do that. And so as we look at the next 2 years, that's really what we're focused on. AI is cool. We're going to use it. We're going to continue to build our models and do some really amazing stuff. But I think ultimately, as you look at what the industry needs, they need improved, margins. They need improved revenue to be able to provide the services that patients need. And that's really what we're focused on.
Just really quick, in regards to referrals, which part of the process, what referrals are you all handling right now?
So our technology will look at everything. So what we'll do, we do three things, right? We use our AI to identify, quantify, and act. And so we will go ahead and do a 12-month assessment of every single unscheduled referral that's in the patient's, in the health system or medical group's electronic health record or EHR. And so we find everything. We're looking at colonoscopies, we're looking at endoscopies, we're looking at MRIs, we're looking at PET scans, we're looking at mammographies, we're looking at everything, GI, we're looking at everything across the board. We're looking at it from an inpatient perspective and an outpatient perspective. But what we find is interesting is that clients are coming to us and saying, well, we're opening up a new GI center. Can you help us find patients that had a GI referral? Their doc said they needed the procedure, they never got it. Can you identify those patients and then funnel those patients to fill that GI center? That's a win-win. They fill the GI center, they're making additional revenue, and the patients are getting the care that they should have gotten and they weren't getting in the first place. So we find we look at all procedure types. We have the ability to use our technology to go from a very big macro standpoint to look at gross and net reimbursement, but then we can drill all the way down to the procedure code. So if you have a particular procedure code that you want to look at for MRIs, we can go ahead and find that, and we can tell you what it's worth, how many patients there are, what the geography of those patients are, where they're located, what their age is, what their demographic is, and what is the proclivity to respond. Is it for text? For baby boomers? Is it phone calls for maybe older than baby boomers? Is it voicemails? Whatever else it is, we can go ahead and identify all of that and then put that into practice to bring those patients into the network.
And our patients are getting smarter. They are using technology.
They absolutely are, and I feel like there's a lot of discussion over the improving the digital front door, and digital front door is extremely important. In a lot of ways, the digital front door is basically defined as, bringing healthcare to the home, right? Getting more people into that digital front door by using digital technologies in the home. And I think that that's great. It makes complete sense. But I still find that, what we're trying to do is trying to find all of those patients that are sitting in the clinical record today, that are millions of patients in the records, that the health systems have no idea that their doctors said they needed a procedure done and never got. So once we identify them and bring them into that digital front door, you now have a win-win across the board, because the health system, again, they go ahead and get the patients, the revenue for the patients, and then the patients get the care that they need.
Right. Agreed. Scott, anything that you want to include, anything that I didn't touch on? I know this is brief and we've got that entrepreneurial spirit, kind of this introduction. Anything that you'd like to just add?
I think ultimately you've nailed it, in the fact that there are healthcare technology startups that are hitting the market, more and more every single month. It seems like more and more every year.
They are, yes.
And there are a lot of groups that are looking to try to scale these companies as fast as possible. But what I've found in where I think you've nailed it is that you can't do that unless you're part of a community, right? And you can't do that through mentorship, and you can't do that without, having the clients, be a part of your success, because you're so wedded to being a part of their success. And so I think, as we're kind of looking at this, what we appreciate at ABAX is the clients that are working with us today, that are seeing what we're doing. They're reaping the benefits from both a care continuity standpoint for their patients, but also from a financial standpoint. And they're working with us to say, hey guys, you have a great idea, but have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? It's almost it's almost a symbiotic relationship that I feel like the vendor community really benefits from. I feel like the community is extremely helpful in helping us to improve our product, because I love the shift away from vendor and more to partner. And I feel like, for us, we're continually looking to scale the business, but we're looking for those client partners that realize that, you've got good people that are trying to do good work in a really hard environment. And as long as we're working to kind of together to pull that sled, amazing things can happen. So I think with the hub, I think you're kind of helping to facilitate that in a level that, man, I would have loved to have had when I started my first company and we just didn't have it. So I appreciate all the work you guys are doing as well.
Absolutely. Okay, let's have a little fun. Paulina, hit it.
Yes, so I'm going to take over right now. Since we're
All
getting
right.
the spirit of sportsmanship and Paris 2024, who is your favorite athlete? Who are you looking forward to? And what is your favorite sport?
All right. So I'm gonna start with your last question first, and it's a
Okay.
very bizarre answer.
Oh,
I'm a huge golfer,
oh,
or
okay.
I love
Okay.
golf, but I'm terrible at it. First
Okay.
of all, I don't have enough time to be good, right? I mean, that's the first part. But I love golf, and the reason why I love golf is because you can get all this mechanics down, but the hardest part of the golf is the 5 inches between your ears, right? You have to be mentally tough in order to play that game. You have to have grit. You have to have perseverance. But when you take it and then you put it into an Olympic format, where now you're playing individually, but you're also playing as a team, sort of like the Ryder Cup. Now you have a bunch of people that all have different ways of doing things being forced to work together.
Mhm.
And so don't ask me who's on the Olympic team yet. I don't even know if they've announced, maybe they have, who's on the Olympic golf team yet. But I feel like, I will definitely be watching golf. I will definitely be watching what these folks are doing, because it's great when you get all these massive type A personalities
Mhm.
that are forced to
Yes.
work together as a team, in order to do what we all want to do, right? Is kind of, bring, the trophies and bring the medals home for America, to do. So again, don't ask me who's on the team yet, but I will definitely be watching golf for sure.
Maybe we'll learn something in the process.
Yes.
Boy, I'd like to.
But it's so interesting, the similarities. I mean, it's just kind of uncanny talking to our CEOs and our founders and watching our athletes and watching their stories and how they got there. And obviously, just a sports buff that I am, I've been watching our basketball team. And Scott, to your point, how they have to now learn how to play together. Scott, Curry can throw the ball 24/7 to this right spot, but he's now playing with the team that they're not there yet. So
Yes.
it's just fantastic. So.
It's funny because you want to kind of draw it all together between athletes and the Olympics and entrepreneurs. Those folks are definitely way more talented, I think, from a physical standpoint. But ultimately, it comes down to perseverance and grit. And
Right.
I think that's where you have it very similar. Being an entrepreneur is kind of insane. There's a little bit of insanity in all of us that are trying to accomplish this, because let's be honest, the odds are stacked incredibly high,
Mhm.
and they're stacked against you. And unless you have that level of perseverance, unless you have that grittiness, I mean, literally, we have cultural pillars at ABAX, and one of them is grittiness, right? I mean, you have to figure out how to get something done. You have to be able to think out of the box. You have to be able to say, okay, today was not the best day that we had, but tomorrow will be better.
Yes.
And if you're focusing on that, one of our other cultural pillars we talk about that's so important for building a company is the 1% rule. Just try to be 1% better today than you were yesterday, and do that for 365 days. You will be a radically different person. So I feel like there are a lot of similarities in terms of climbing that mountain, so to speak, whether it be on the entrepreneurship side or whether it be on the athlete side, to get to where you want to be. But man, it's fun when you get there. It's a lot of fun, but you ask the same people, right? They never show think about the Olympic swimmers, and they never show the hours and hundreds of hours of
Right.
just lap swimming that they're doing. They all look at that, they're standing on the podium is great, but it's that stuff that's underneath that you have to do day in and day out, which I think makes us very similar.
And it's so funny. Somebody was said, you don't sleep, you just work, work, work. And then your team decides not to answer emails at 12, 3 a.m. They just know that when they sign on at 8, it will be okay, that we just haven't slept and we got an idea.
And that's exactly right. And let's be honest, it's not fair for entrepreneurs or owners to expect people to believe in, the passion as much as they do. It's our job to make sure that they get the vision and all of that, because, I believe people want to be led, right? They want to be led towards something bigger than themselves. They want to work for something bigger than themselves, right? All of the athletes that go into the Olympic Stadium, they are all individual type A's. They're the best in the world at what they do, but at the same time, they're trying for something bigger than them, which is actually to, do great for America. And I feel like from an entrepreneur standpoint, it's incredibly hard to get people to kind of, see that vision and see that fire and kind of have a similar fire in their belly.
Mm-hmm.
And not all people do, but I feel like if you've got the right team that is literally sitting on the right cultural pillars, it makes that job that much more enjoyable, because you have everybody that is kind of cut from the same DNA, from the same cloth. And then you're not as worried about the fact that Bob didn't respond to 8 a.m. because, Bob may have been dropping off the kids at school, but
right.
Man, Bob's going to be there at 8 p.m., so to speak. And when you've got that DNA in there, it's hard to imbue that into folks. Not everybody gets it. But at the same time, again, when you do, man, it's fun. It's cool. It's cool to see that fire.
It is. All right, friends. I'd call it a wrap.